Welcome everyone to the second bonus episode in the Start Into SQL program, and this one is all about interview tips and tricks. So the aim of this episode is to cover off quite a lot of tips and tricks for you before the interview itself and during the interview, just to get you fully prepared and really boost your confidence. So the main areas that we're going to cover are the initial preparations. There's a few things that you can do initially to get yourself in the right frame of mind and make sure you don't arrive at your interview all stressed out. Next, we're going to look at the general interview process itself. We're going to pull some nice little tips and tricks for you there in that, and we're going to wrap things up with the technical tests. You may or you may not have one of those during your interview, but we're going to see what those are like. So then let's have a look at the initial preparations. Now, it goes without saying that the more preparation you do, the less stress you'll have wherever you go on the interview itself. So there's a few key things that you need to make sure you do initially to make sure that you arrive at your interview in good time, ready to go, and you're not stressed out and flapping like mad. Now, obviously, you'll need to do some research on the company itself. That's quite key, so that you know something about the company's history, you know about maybe when they started, for example, what they do. Maybe they've won loads of awards recently, really high value awards, etc. And it's good for you to be familiar with the company itself. Now, I can't imagine going and working for a company that I know absolutely nothing about. It may not be the right company for me, thinking about it. So make sure you do your research. Fortunately, these days, every company seems to have a website, so it's very easy to get information on that company and make sure you're up to date with what they do, what they're all about, and potentially where you fit into it. Now, first impressions count, and that pretty much goes without saying. And I know I'm probably saying things you may already know, but these are always good tips and tricks for you to remember when you're preparing for an interview, no matter what role you're going for. First of all, dress for success. So you need to be fully smartly dressed. I always go to an interview in a suit and tie. Just make sure that I'm neat and presentable, I'm clean, my hair is in good order, etc., etc. Make sure you are 100% appearance-wise. Next, the interview location. This is quite important, is finding out exactly where you need to be and what time. And even more important is to know how easy it is to actually get there. Whether you're using public transport or you're using your own car, you need to know the ins and outs of what it's like at that location and how long it's going to take you. So possibly maybe you want to drive to the company the day before, just see what it's like, see what the traffic is like, and then make sure you know exactly where they are. Sometimes GPSs could take you to the wrong building, etc. So just make sure you're 100% happy you know where you're going for interview. There's nothing worse than jumping in your car or in the train, going somewhere, not knowing where you're meant to end up in, and then you're flapping around, you're getting nervous, time's ticking away. Better to be prepared and know exactly where you're going beforehand. Now, it's always a good idea to arrive early. 5 minutes is an absolute minimum. aim to get there about 15-20 minutes beforehand. It's quite often you need to sign in at the front desk, you need to ask for the person, you need to maybe go up in a lift. That takes time. You never know what could happen. Maybe you need to find parking, and it's quite tricky. So aim to arrive early, possibly 15 minutes. It's always a good thing to get there really early, because then you can compose yourself, you can nip to the loo quickly, give your hands a quick wash, make sure that you're smart, neatly presented, and you're ready to go. So always arrive early. It's nothing worse for an interviewer when you've taken time out of your job and the person you're interviewing is 15-20 minutes late. That to me says that person's not really keen on the role. They couldn't be bothered to turn up on time for the interview, so they probably won't be bothered to turn up on time for work. So would I want to hire that person? Probably not. Next, if you can, print out a few copies of your CV. At least print one out, at least. That way, I've known in an interview where the interview is rushed in and he hasn't got a copy of your CV, you can just dish one out and pass it along. And it's quite a good impression that you've come fully prepared. Also, when you arrive early, you could sit down and have a quick scan of your CV. Make sure you're fully prepared for your interview and you know 100% what you've put down on there. Also, take in a notepad and pen, a small notepad and pen. So when you're sitting there during the interview, whip that one out, have the pen in one hand, and it looks like you're paying attention, that you're keen and eager, you're ready to take notes, which you can do during the interview. Just get things down, and it looks really good that you're fully interested in the interview. Also, know the name of the people interviewing you and, if possible, their positions. It's a really simple one, but one that people forget about. I know I've forgotten on many occasions. There's nothing worse than pitching up to the office, going to the reception desk, and the receptionist says, "Who are you here to see?" and you just draw a complete blank. Usually what I do is just write the names at the top of the CV that I've brought in, that I've printed out, or even on the notepad. So you can just refer to that. I'm here to see so and so and so for an interview, and you get signed in and off you go. So remember that little trick there. Also, for the interview itself, prepare at least one question to ask at the end. More is better, maybe up to 3 questions. It can be on things about the company, things about the role, etc. Just try and get some questions down, because it really does show that you are interested in that interview, and more than likely you'll be thoroughly interested when you get into your work. So that is not an exhaustive list, but quite a few really good things to consider when you're preparing for your interviews. So let's move on to the different interview phases then. And this is the normal process that interviews will go through. Now, of course, every interviewer does things differently, but these are sort of areas that I would sort of like to cover, and I've been on many interviews where they've covered these sort of areas as well. So firstly, you'll normally get asked questions about your skills and knowledge. That's obviously on the first page of your CV, so you'll probably get asked about those first off. So they'll be looking at your IT skills, in particular any sort of SQL skills, any SQL training that you have. They'll probably want to check that out, see what's going on. Any other technical skills you might have. You could have Excel skills, Word and Office, SharePoint, all that sort of stuff is all good, and they may ask you questions on that. Soft skills, and once again, are always very important in roles these days: communication skills, customer service, all that sort of good stuff. So they may ask you quite a few questions on your soft skills there. And they may even ask you basic SQL questions to confirm your sort of SQL training, as it were. So that even simple questions like, to you, what is a database? What is a schema? What is a table? All those sort of things. What is a join? How do you use joins, etc.? It's very simple questions just to get you in the flow and just to confirm your skills, especially your IT skills that you've written down on your CV. Now, they'll also ask you questions on your previous roles, so your positions that you've held in those roles, and of course what you did during those roles there. Now, the key thing with this is to be totally honest. Your CV should reflect what you've done and what you've achieved, and when you answer questions on those, just be completely fair, completely open, and completely honest about that. If you start sort of drifting and you start waffling a bit and you sound a bit ropey, they may start asking you even deeper questions on something that you're not too sure about, and you could get yourself in a bit of a muddle. So just be open and honest when discussing your previous roles. They'll then ask you questions about yourself. In particular, how would you handle certain situations? For example, if a colleague of yours, a more senior colleague, is maybe being quite disruptive and is disrupting your work, how would you deal with that situation? So a lot of sort of situational type of questions, how you would deal with things. There's no sort of wrong or right answer with these. It's just a case of gauging, what sort of person you are, what sort of character you are in dealing with different situations that may arise in the workplace. So again, honesty is the best policy for that. And the whole idea about asking you these questions is to see if you are a team player, if you can be trusted, or if you are a liability. Next up, we have a few interview tips for you. First of all, when it comes to being offered a drink when you first arrive, definitely take them up on the offer and ask for a glass of water. During the interview, if you find yourself talking a lot and your throat dries and your voice gets a little bit croaky, like mine tends to do when I'm doing these videos, make sure you have a glass of water on hand. You can have a quick sip just to wet your mouth and then continue with your explanations. So don't be afraid to ask for water, or when offered, take a glass of water in there with you. Now, it's a good thing to compose yourself before any question, because a lot of times, especially when you first go in to the room with the interviewers, you can be quite nervous. I know, even though I've done many interviews myself, I do tend to get a little bit nervous first off. So when you're asked a question, just simply take a breath, compose yourself for a little bit, and think about what you've been asked and how you're going to respond to that question as well. Instead of just rattling off something weird and wonderful that doesn't make much sense and then thinking to yourself afterwards, why did I say that? Best to just take that initial second to just compose yourself, take a breath, and think about what you're going to say. Also remember, and this is something that people don't realize, is that while you're being interviewed to fill a role, you're also going to see if you will like working at that company. So in a way, you're also interviewing the interviewer. So you could go in there and you can see that you had a certain sort of idea of what the role is all about, but when you go in for the interview, it could be something slightly different, something that you're not too comfortable with, or they're asking for a whole lot of things over and above what you're prepared to go for and probably what you actually expected. So at the end of the day, remember, you don't need to take a role that you've actually been offered. If you don't like the company or you don't like the people that interviewed you, you don't have to take that role, even if it is offered to you. You've got to feel comfortable working there as much as the interviewer feels comfortable with hiring you to fill that role. And lastly, just sit back and enjoy the experience. Even if you have a bad interview, it's still good experience going forward into the next ones. And what's the worst that can happen? You don't get the job. Well, that just says that that role wasn't right for you, and another even better one will come along ready for you to fill. So don't worry too much, just enjoy the experience. So, technical test wise, they can sometimes you can sit the technical test first before the interview, or you can do it after the interview itself. It depends how the interviewers want to play it. Now, the level that the test will be pitched at, especially for an entry-level role, it's not going to be anything advanced like a SQL guru delving into code and all that sort of stuff. It's going to be pretty straightforward stuff, but it may include things like joins. Now, the technical tests I've done in the past all had a simple join on it, where I had to join two tables together and pull information from one and the other. Really basic stuff, some of which I didn't know at the time, and I failed due to the technical test, as you've heard on the previous previous bonus episode. But it's not designed for advanced SQL masters, especially for an entry-level role. Now, it can be a possible mix of Excel and SQL questions, and normally it'll be done either on a laptop where you'll have an Excel spreadsheet open with tabs of different questions, and then you just type your answers in there, or it could be a sheet of paper with a pen and you just simply write your answer there, or it could be both, or you may be lucky and you won't get a technical test at all. But either way, technical tests are great because they give you a bit of chance to practice and see what it's all about in an interview. Now, with Excel, you're probably likely to come across questions asking you about pivot tables. Can you create them? Any basic formulas like if and concat? Maybe, possibly, quite rare, you might be asked about a VLOOKUP formula. See what you know about that, for example, and potentially bringing data in from Excel. I've been asked that question before. Now, when it comes to pivot tables and bringing data in from SQL, we do cover that in bonus episode 3, so have no fear, we'll get you up and running on those two if they are required in a technical test. During my working life in SQL, I do a lot of exporting data into Excel from SQL, so it's all good knowledge for you to use in your career, not just a technical test. And of course, within SQL, you've got basic functions. They'll probably ask you things on that, and of course the good old joins as discussed. Now, we've put together a sheet with some questions that you're likely to see in a technical test, more sort of along the lines of the feel of these questions, and you can access that as part of the course material. And you'll see that they're all pretty basic, but it'll give you an idea of what to expect. A few more tips for you on the technical test side of things. First of all, be conscious of the time you have to do that test. Sometimes you get 15 minutes, sometimes you get half an hour to answer a few questions, but just be wary of that time. They're not going to give you all day to sit there and have a go at a few questions, but you're looking at 15 minutes or half an hour, and not that many questions. They're not going to ask you to do 100 questions in 15 minutes. It has to be manageable. And best thing to do is when you start the test, simply go through, read a question. If you can answer it straight away, then bang out that answer and move on to the next. So go through the whole list, get the ones, answer the questions that you know the answers to straight away. That way you know that if you run out of time, you've still answered all the ones you can. And once you've done that, then go back to the questions that you're struggling with, ones that will take a little bit of time to do. So get the easy ones out the way first, and then go back and have a stab at the more challenging ones. Any answer is definitely better than no answer. Sometimes you could be writing how you'd go about solving a question or a query, and you may mess it up at the end, but the person marking the test could see that you were on the right path. You just had a little bit of wobbly there towards the end, and he'll probably give you a bonus point anyway, and he'll be more happy than that you had a go at the question and you were on the right track than if you just simply didn't answer the question at all. So give it a go. Now, on some tests, on some questions, they may ask you to write a query in a specific manner, in a specific method, to achieve a specific result. Now, I've found in the past that if I didn't know how to do that specific method, I've done it in another method anyway to achieve the same result. Fair enough, I didn't do it in the way specified, but I did it in the way that I could. And sometimes again, that shows a bit of thinking outside the box, that you can achieve the aim even if it's not in the way that they want to do it. So once again, don't leave that question blank. If you know the answer, put it down. If you don't know the answer but you know how to get there in another method, just get it down anyway. Shows a bit of initiative there. Last but not least, go in there and have fun. Tests are there to be enjoyed. You can learn a lot from them, and if you don't get that job role, you know when you go for the next one and there's a technical test, you know exactly what to expect there. So that's it, everyone, for the interview tips and tricks. We've covered quite a lot there, and I hope you all enjoyed the second bonus episode. As mentioned, bonus episode 3, we're going to look at Excel and how to bring data from SQL into Excel. There's quite a few methods, pivot tables, etc. So we're going to have a look at those in the next video. Until then, everyone, I will leave you with this, and I wish you all a fantastic day.